Joined by Matt Ström and Josh Gross from Planetary. They are a studio empowering companies through better design. Welcome to the show, guys.
Hey.
Hey, thanks. Good to be
Well,
here.
first I've got to tell you that I love the name Planetary. I think that's awesome. I'm curious where that name came from. How did that come to be?
It's a good question. I actually, prior to starting Planetary, had started a company called Suborbital, and just kind of stuck with the space theme when I started this. The company started really without a goal of starting an agency, so I had kind of just picked a name out of a hat. It's on something that I was interested in, but it didn't have any real meaning behind it at the time.
Yeah, I love the whole space thing. Well, I guess what drove you guys to starting your own studio?
I mean, really, the what happened was I'd been doing freelancing for a long time, and Matt, I know you've been doing freelancing for a while too,
hmm
and we realized that individually, we could get a lot done, but together we could get a lot more done. We had our separate sets of skills together was a lot more powerful than just individuals. Um, so we thought, it makes sense to really grow what we could be able to do and be able to do a little bit more than what we've been able to do individually for a while.
Well, how did you guys end up meeting?
So Josh and I actually both went to school in St. Louis, and we didn't meet. And I guess a little more than a year ago, we all got together with our mutual friends, and we're planning on taking a trip together. That's when I met Josh for the first time. And since then, just really kind of, as we talked about our individual freelance work, it became very clear that we both had very similar goals and both had very similar approaches to the process of design and what we were doing with design. And our technical background was overlapped a lot. So yeah, it was a pretty good fit.
Well, that's pretty cool. Um, and so I guess now that you've started the studio, when did you guys start? You guys are about a year old, right?
Yeah. So I officially the name came to exist a little more than a year ago, and then a month or two later, Matt and I joined together, and we really kind of went at it. Prior to that, it was just a name, and then we turned it into a real thing.
Cool. Well, I guess there's a lot of discussion recently with Jeffrey Zeldman and whatnot about the death and future of agencies. Um, what do you guys think the future of kind of like agencies and studios are?
It's interesting that you mentioned that because part of what Josh and I originally sat down and discussed about what Planetary would be is sort of an answer to the traditional agency model. Um, Both of us, having been freelancers in the past and knowing how powerful, we wanted to really employ some of the same principles to our clients' work. Um, some of the things like being just the right size for the task you're given, uh, not having a lot of sort of organizational overhead on our end, not weighing our clients down by retaining, a huge staff of people, being able to build a team specifically for our clients' projects, from our network of freelancers and from our resources. I think that it sounds strange to start an agency in response to the death of the agency, but it seemed like we could really bring some of our experience from the freelance realm to bear, and it's worked out really well, I think, for our clients. Josh, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think a big part of it was, being able to be a little more flexible in the size and the scale of what we were doing, and being able to better serve our clients through that. And also, I think a big part of it was that the way we approached it wasn't the typical, hey, we can do development for you, hey, we can do design for you. We didn't want to just be, design dev shop, which has become a popular thing and kind of a commodity. But we wanted to be able to be, a partner to these clients and be able to help them not just when they actually needed us, but when they didn't. When they were, going along fine and we saw something that we could maybe help them out with, we can be a continual partner rather than being somebody who comes in and jumps out kind of here and there.
Mm-hmm.
I guess kind of what are some examples with your current clients? What are some examples where you've kind of gone that extra step with them?
Mm-hmm. I think that let's see. I'm trying to answer this question without violating any NDAs.
Don't violate any NDAs.
What do you think, Josh? Does anything come off the top of your head?
Yeah, I mean, Undercurrent, right?
Yeah. That's what I was thinking about.
We can talk broadly about that.
So I think one thing I was thinking about when you were talking, when you mentioned Zeldman's writing and just sort of the general understanding of how agencies go wrong, is a lot of the time when we talk to our clients, they expect us to be the, let's say, oh, you're the project manager, right? Yeah, but I'm also the founder of the company. I'm also the creative director. I'm also the designer, and I'm also the developer. So one example of a time that this has really, I think, surprised our clients is we recently did some work for GE with a consultancy in New York called Undercurrent, where we were in the room with a group of, management, upper level sort of power players in their organization, and sat down and did these rapid fire strategic thinking exercises with them, really in-depth interviews with their customers. We helped them through the UX process and some of the ideas around their product. And then, as we're generating all of these ideas, Josh and I sit down and we design and develop prototypes of the ideas, kind of like as these ideas are coming out from a strategic level. And the ability to do that, where we're not having to manage large teams of people just to move direction, design, and development, I think it feels kind of like a magic trick sometimes. It feels kind of like it's very surprising, and our clients have been really happy with that agility.
Well, that's interesting. So as you're there, kind of iterating through kind of what you're seeing working with Undercurrent and listening to their customers, like how long of a period of time is that? Are you guys working over a week? Is this just a couple of hours? How long does that exercise take, and how far do you get kind of in developing these prototypes?
So this particular workshop, the first time we ever met any of those people was on a Monday, and by Friday we had presented fully formed high fidelity prototypes to their to the people who are stakeholders with them.
Wow.
We had gone from a completely blank slate to an incredibly well thought out product.
You guys are fairly new starting out, and obviously GE is a pretty big name. I saw that you guys have also worked with Jawbone. Where did your first clients come from? How did you get them?
It's funny. I mean, a lot of it's been at least for the first clients for Planetary, have been through our existing freelance connections, our network. A lot of it's been primarily inbound stuff. We've worked with a bunch of people in the past from whatever variety of scenarios that we've collected those clients, and they come back to us. We tell them that we have a little more capacity, with a little more, we can do a little bit more now than we could do before, and more often than not, that's usually pretty exciting. Some of the clients are a little afraid it's going to cost them more, it's going to be a little more overhead, but once they understand that it's not, it's been a pretty swift transition.
Cool, cool. Well, one of the things you guys have done that is fairly unique is kind of repackage a lot of your services. So you guys have this, I guess, kind of two products, as you put it, Micro and Rethink.
Mm-hmm.
Could you tell us a little bit about those projects or about those products?
Yeah, so it's funny that those were born out of, we've done a lot of stuff with these clients, like having done the week-long workshop with Undercurrent and GE, having done, at the end of last year, I ran this project called 1hour.me, where I sold an hour of my time I sold 1 hour at a time of my expertise for people if they needed it. It started at $1 and went up. And I tried this just as kind of an experiment to see what would happen, how people would react. And people loved it. It was, they were excited by the idea that they could get an hour of help or 2 hours or 3 hours of help, a small amount, and get input or feedback on their products or their website or their business. And so from there, having done that, it was very unstructured when I did it at the end of last year, early this year. We decided to repackage that and kind of reconsider how we approach our projects and how we work with clients early on and how we work with them on an ongoing basis. And taking those kind of broad floating ideas, we kicked around a few things and came up with, well, why don't we just repackage what we already do pretty frequently into two things that we can just offer to clients right away. Make it more structured.
That's interesting. I remember seeing the 1hour.me and remember thinking that's a really clever, interesting idea, and I had no idea that was you. That's that's funny. That's a very cool concept. Very cool concept.
I think that another sort of another factor that went into it was you can attest, and anybody that's worked in any creative role can attest, is when you start working with a new person, new client, there's a certain level of trust that you have to establish with them. You have to really get in and build a relationship with them very quickly. The better the relationship between you and the client is, the more trust that exists there, the more quickly you can move, the more willing they are to share ideas that might seem tenuous to them, the more willing they are to hear tenuous ideas from you. And we were kind of trying to think of how to best build that relationship. And one great idea that the 1hour.me produced was, if we can give our clients a way to work with us in a smaller capacity first. Let's say somebody's thinking about a new product or a complete rebuild of their current product, but they don't want to just jump all in with one person. We're hoping to give them a way to interact with us and work with us on a small scale, so that we can then work together on a big scale with more confidence. I think back to something you were saying earlier, one of the reasons why the agency model isn't working out as well is because more and more companies are bidding out their projects to multiple agencies, and they're going on job boards and they're putting up their RFP, and they're getting 30, 40, 50 responses. And so oftentimes there's just sort of this overwhelming decision that has to happen. the very first thing that a client has to do on any project is this big decision. So hopefully by having these smaller sort of getting to know you kind of pieces, we can make that decision a lot easier for the client.
And now that you guys have implemented that, how have the results been?
They've been well. We'll see. We're still. I think the jury's still out on it. You know, we just launched this a couple weeks ago, and have been marketing it. And you know, maybe get back with us in 6 months, and we can do a recap on it.
It's fair. Well, so in your blog, and by the way, I love your blog. I think it's great. It's, you know, I feel like you know, being able to write and being able to communicate is really important, and kind of just beyond the design. I like a lot of what you're writing about. I saw your post about Go. And that's something I'd kind of seen in several different places, but didn't exactly know what it was.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting. But one of the things that you said was that 10% of a project is work and 90% of it is communication. What steps can be taken to help communicate with clients better?
I mean, I think one of the most important things you can do in any project, and this is frankly, from making these mistakes many, many times myself, is really setting their expectations up front. You got to be able to let them know when to expect to hear from you, what they expect to hear, and then making sure you actually follow through on those things. If you're going to say you're going to follow through on Wednesday, Friday, and the following Thursday, you got to do that, and you make sure that you're thorough and you really outline what you want to say in those emails ahead of time, and then you make sure that even if you're not going to meet what you expect, you have something to say to them when they expect it. Early on in my freelance career, I've made that mistake probably a good dozen times before I realized that clients weren't happy with me because I wasn't communicating, not because the work wasn't getting done. I would get the work done, clients would still be unhappy with it. And that was really because it was the lack of communication, not the lack of quality.
Interesting. Yeah, I feel like setting expectations is something that is incredibly important, and I feel like it's also kind of something that can be fairly difficult to do. A lot of times you get a project brief and the scope is fairly broad. Anyways, so I'm curious. You guys are designers and developers. Is there a specific philosophy you have when it comes to working on projects?
I think that we don't have a let's say, sort of code of Hammurabi that we consult every time we sit down to do a project, because every project is different. But that in and of itself is kind of our the way we often go about it is we're very flexible. We sit down in front of our projects and say, okay, what does this need? Instead of going into it with a set of let's say, going into it with an ego that, let's say, our client has hired us because we're the best, or because we're who we are and we just need to be that person for the next 6 months. I think Josh and I sit down and really figure out, I think one of the posts on that on our blog was about asking the deeper questions and looking into, let's say, the client has asked you to solve some things for them. You got to look into what the subtext of that is. You have to kind of read between the lines and see what they're really asking. So it's sort of more of a very you have to put a lot of thought into each task before you start doing it. And that's sort of how our work has evolved. Josh, I'd love to hear what you have to say about this.
Yeah, I mean, it's true. I mean, but we approach our projects without any predisposition about how we're going to go through this project, because every client, every need is different. And in the first, we have our basic, we have a basic structure, and we always ask at the very first step is, as a client, you came to us with X need, Y need, whatever it is, but what are you ultimately trying to achieve? And that's what we try to work with them to figure out. That's what we try to figure out on our own, is what is ultimately their goal? Why do they want to redesign their site? Why do they want to put out this product? What is their goal? Is it merely just to make more money? Is it that they want a better connection with their customers? You know, what is the underlying purpose? And from there, we figure out and we lay out steps of how we want to, you know, set out this project. Whether it's first, let's talk to your clients or your customers and understand how they're interacting with it, or what they're not getting out of your product right now. Or is it, you know, where in the market does this product not fit, and where do you want it to fit, and how can it fit better? What are your competitors doing? It's really very dependent on who the client actually is, but we always try to approach it from, like, what's the end goal, and then let's work backwards from there, and what are the steps we need to achieve? We need to get there.
Right. So the client, all it says, you know, we need X, but really you've got to try and take a step back and think about, well, why does the client really need X?
Exactly.
Yeah, and here, you know, here's a very basic example. 3 different times, you know, we can go up and do a site redesign. And sort of traditional wisdom would say that our goal all 3 times is to produce the best piece of work that we can possibly do. Given our skill set, we just need to do this beautiful thing that's going to get on all the design blogs and win all the awards. But from experience, I've had jobs where the thing that has made that job a success is that I've been a really good guy to work with. Like, the client doesn't even care about the way their site looks. They just like working with us. They just like us as people. We've had jobs where the client, in the end, didn't care about anything other than one button on that website being green, one very particular button, and we had some frustration about it, but in the end, all he wanted to be happy was this one button to be green. And then we've had other clients who have said, we want our ad revenue to increase. We don't care what it looks like. We don't care what our customers say they like. We just want our ad revenue to increase. And so those are great examples where all 3 of those times we could have gone into it with a very particular sort of personal goal for us, but it wouldn't have mattered in the end. All that mattered was, you know, these clients had conditions for success, and like it or not, you got to figure out how to satisfy that.
Well, those are great examples. So, Planetary, is it just the 2 of you? Are you guys just the faces of it? You work with other freelancers? I guess, what's the team like?
Yeah, so it's just the 2 of us as the kind of face of it right now. We work with other freelancers. We bring on other people. We have a kind of a small set of people that we work with pretty frequently. People we've liked, we've worked with a bunch of times before. We found we really work well with them. So as needed, we kind of grow, and then, you know, during the really good times, we have everybody on board. And then when everything quiets down a little bit, we can spend some time introspecting, working on our own stuff, and it'll maybe just be Matt and I for a bit. So we kind of make it, you know, we make it work as necessary, and as we grow, I'm sure we'll have more people working with us on a regular basis rather than on and off.
How do you guys do that as a project wraps up? What kind of what things do you guys think about and reflect on?
I think that for me personally, one very important part of every project is, was this project a success? And there are so many things that can define that. And the last thing on that list is, did we get paid? I mean, you know, that getting paid is a success, but I think that there are some very important things that that as an agency, as a startup, as a young company, we have to be very aware of. When we're finished with a project, we can have a happy client, we can have a fat paycheck, we can have, you know, all of our loose ends tied up, and that there still might be a reason why that project's not successful. We could have just spent, you know, 2 weeks of all-nighters in a row. You know, we, Josh and I could just be really mad at each other. You know, sometimes you have to really consider whether or not you've succeeded and whether or not those are on your own terms.
And just playing on that, I mean,
Go ahead.
oh, I'm sorry. The measure of success is really like, I mean, what Matt said is what ultimately was a success, and ultimately what could we have done better? Where can we next time around with the same client, with a different client, with anybody, have done something better or approached it differently so that we don't run into these, you know, a week of all-nighters at the end of the project, or that our, you know, the rest of the team was frustrated because of the lack of, you know, if there was a problem with communication somewhere along the line. How can we do that better next time? And we always end up sitting down, making notes. You know, we'll even make a bulleted list of things where we felt like we failed on a certain project and what we can then do to improve it. So we always kind of keep this in mind.
Josh is a pro. After a project, we'll have pages full of notes that are great.
Well, speaking of you guys working together, what's it like working remotely? Because you're in New York and you're in St. Louis, right?
That's right. It hardly feels like we're remote. We use a piece of software called Squiggle that basically Josh and I are in constant communication. We can jump on a call at any time. There's it takes a picture with your webcam every minute or so. So I can see if Josh is at his desk. I can talk to him in a chat, or I can jump on a video call with him, and it is almost sometimes it might be even better than being in the same room, because you don't just have that ability to incessantly kind of like, you know, tap each other on the shoulder.
It's not easy enough where you can just constantly be bantering, but it's easy enough where you guys can communicate efficiently.
Yeah, we do our fair share of banter. Yeah.
Well, cool. Well, you know, looking at some of your projects, I love the Separate Together project that you guys did for Sony. I'm kind of obsessed with, or as a child, I was obsessed with trains, so I saw that and was like, it's super cool. Do you guys have a favorite project that you guys have worked on together so far?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, Matt. What would you say would be your favorite of this? I can come up with a couple examples. I'm curious what you think.
I think that the projects where Josh and I have worked the most closely together are typically the best projects. Because being remote, and also one thing that bears mentioning is Josh and I both made a big effort early in our freelance careers to kind of get involved in a community and build a network. So sometimes we'll have leads that come in that are from St. Louis. Sometimes we'll have leads that come in from New York. So we'll kind of take the lead on those projects and handle some of the work kind of as the project manager. So every once in a while we get a project where both of us are really going full steam. Both of us have a lot of interaction with the clients, and those are typically the best projects for some obvious reasons, but also just in a small company, really like being able to put 100% of your resources towards this making something a success is always a really great opportunity.
Definitely, definitely. You talked about the importance of building a network. How does someone go about doing that? What are some of the key things that you've done to help build your network?
A very resilient liver. So this is a brief aside on sometimes differences in culture. St. Louis is everything has free beer all the time.
That's incredible. I need to move to St. Louis.
It is a blessing and a curse. So that is my input. Go ahead, Josh. Serious answer, please.
Well, it's funny because we were actually just talking about this. Matt and I were just talking about this earlier, but I think one of the things that I've tried to do, and it's a perpetual effort to improve upon it, is just try to, rather than just networking for the sake of networking, try to, you make an effort to connect with these people on a regular basis. You meet somebody at an event, you meet somebody at somewhere, maybe you see them once or twice at other events, but there's the in-betweens, and the in-betweens are where you can either make a relationship with somebody work, or it can wither, and making it work is really about just following up with them, saying hi, sending them something an article that's they'd be interested in or relates to them, and sending it to them and say, hey, this made me think of you. Those kinds of like building the networks where you meet the person at some event, something, and then you continue to build and maintain that relationship over time, is something that it's really hard to do and something I'm still working on doing, but I guess over the years I've done well enough that people are still coming back to me years later that I didn't, certainly wouldn't have expected to still be in touch with, and I just love that connection with her.
Yeah, I think that one thing that's important to keep in mind is the most valuable connections that I've made have happened outside of predetermined networking events. It's somebody I might have met at a happy hour or a meetup or at a professional event or anything like that where we traded business cards, but then I've been out at a show and I'll see that person and we'll grab a drink and talk. And like that's where the real connecting happens. That's where the real networking happens. It does not happen at networking events. As much as that's important to like get out there and get your business card in people's hands, it's a deeply personal thing, and you have to make a deeply personal connection.
I like that. Networking doesn't happen at networking events.
No.
Well,
dating, honestly.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to say that we're kind of reaching the end of it. I do have to ask: Are you guys going to be starting a rocket ship company or a space company anytime soon? Is that in the works?
Yeah, I am an aspiring astronaut. There's not a lot to the amateur. There's not a lot of amateur astronauts out there.
But when there is, you're going to be one of the best ones, right?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. It's funny because Josh started this company called Planetary. My Twitter handle is I like science.
I saw that. That's a great handle.
So it was like I said before, it was a pretty good fit.
Well, I guess are there any last kind of pieces of advice that you give to freelancers or people trying to start a studio?
It's hard. It is really, really hard, and I think that sometimes the way that media works and the people who get interviewed on stage at the big events they all like to promote a very glamorous, very savant kind of attitude where it seems like everything was just presented on a silver platter. But I think that a lot needs to be said for the hard work and determination that it requires to be professional in this kind of profession. So you know, I think that every day I wake up and am, you know, I really realize how much it pays to be determined and sort of relentless when it comes to pursuing a career in the creative industry.
Oh yeah. The only thing I have to add to that is that your phone becomes your best friend and your worst enemy. When you're dealing with clients all day long, it's incredibly handy to be able to just respond when I'm not, you know, at my desk at my computer. But it also leads to a lot of those heart pounding moments where suddenly you get an email and, you know, you're 2 steps into the subway and the client needs something desperately. You're running back out to the nearest coffee shop to sit down and pound out a proper email or fix something before you can actually, you know, try to do what you were doing. It's like Matt said, it's a lot of work. You have to certainly expect to put in the hours, as frustrating as that might be.
Definitely. All right. Well, Matt, Josh, I really appreciate you guys talking with me this evening, and I think it was very helpful. I thought it was a very interesting interview.
No, thank you.
Thank you.